Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host, and by joining me back, we're ending the month, if you will, of Black History Month, and there's still a lot of issues that are facing the Portland metropolitan area or the state of Oregon for that matter. And so I thought maybe why not? I'll just get some folks who have been very, very much involved in local communication with the residents and voters of the state of Oregon, and more specifically, Portland, Oregon. Because when you start thinking about Black Lives Matter, and when you start thinking about the whole issue of Black History Month, the majority of the definition of Blacks living in the state of Oregon is in the Portland metropolitan area, or / Multnomah County aspect of it. So consequently, I went out, I reached out to who I felt was probably one of the most positive person, more assertive person that I knew of that could really get into the issues, and we'll just have a good chat about what this person has observed, and then where we are today and where we should be going. And as you know, recently we just had a piece with Dr. Milner, who's the professor of Black Studies at Portland State. He has since retired, but he basically gave up his retirement to come on the show to sort of educate the Oregonians as to the rationale for supporting, if you will, the whole issue of the reparation piece that's being introduced right now in the legislature. And I might mention the fact of the matter is that the next step from him is that we're going to get in touch with our local senator here in the Portland metropolitan area. One of his district happens to be here in the Portland metropolitan area. Talking about Senator Ruth Frederick. As you know, he's got two precincts in his area. So the name of the game is that we're going to be having him on, and he's going to come up with the rationale as to why he introduced this particular bill. Where's the bill? Where does it go from here? And then we're just going to follow it, and we're going to get that information out there big time. So with that, why don't we just get on? Let's say I've got two guests sitting up there in the audience, one of which is Rachelle Dixion, who I knew on the campaign trail. I mean, she's a young woman, so that means she was running all over the place. Anyway, she ran for city council during that particular time, and she was definitely out there. And it's like anything else. You need the money in many ways to get the name out there aspect of it. She didn't get my name until later on. We kept going back and forth on the phone aspect of it because she's a busy lady. I mean, just getting her today, it was tough. But the fact of it is, she's here, and we're going to do everything we can so that she can give her a platform, if you want to speak from, and hopefully she will continue to come, and we can just keep up. She is going to run this next time around. I know she will be running, and we will do everything we can to be able to communicate what she's doing. And we'll give everybody an opportunity. And this is Black History Month, so she's got the whole floor for that matter. And then also joining us is Mr. Carpenter. He's a good old friend of mine. He and I, he has his own show, the producer show, that he does on cable. And he's always brought me in every so often to be a co-host with him. And I've done that. And so we know one another quite well. And so consequently, he will be able to communicate to all the other producers about who Rachelle is all about. And maybe Rachelle might be able to get on those shows. Because, folks, I've been there. It costs student-earned money for all that media advertising that you have to get your name out there. Well, better front with your community television, in most cases, is the way to go. Community television is the way to go. The key is to get these producers to do that. And this time around, I'm going to ask Rachelle, what she's going to do for us this next round in terms of the election. She did a candidates fair. I remember when she did a candidates fair, and I really got excited about that piece. She was a busy lady at that time, but I let her go through the process. But this time, what we'll do, I'll make sure that we'll get cable television involved in something that she will perform on. She will be the chair, if you will, in many ways, for the candidates fair that we're going to have at community television. So she doesn't know that yet, but the fact of the matter is we're going to make sure she gets involved in the piece. And she's going to bring these candidates on the tube, give them the opportunity to articulate the issues that are impacting our city so we can get back to a nice city of roses again and all those other good things for that matter. Okay? So with that, you got that? Rachelle,
Yes.
we've introduced her. Rachelle, welcome aboard. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
Look here, we just got through interviewing Dr. Milner, and you basically were asking him a question just at the end of it. The deal, he did his piece aspect of it, but overall, what do you think about this presentation? Let's start off with that way. A question to you: what do you think about? What did you think about his presentation? Do you think this is something that Oregonians needs to know?
Sure. About why Oregon's racism and systemic racism feels very different than other places I've been, like Maryland, DC, Virginia, Atlanta, Georgia. You'd think that there would be some kind of similarity, especially when you're talking the Deep South. And I've been and have experienced racism in the South, and still in Oregon, it's different and in many ways much more harmful.
Mm-hmm.
It's invisible to many people. They can't see it. And I like to know where I stand. And if you go to Georgia, you know exactly where you're going and who you're going to be with, and everywhere you're not wanted. And here in Oregon, you come here and you expect that the smiling faces actually mean that people are welcoming to you. And it's not the case. And so it throws people off guard. And growing up here, I was not aware of how deep the racism was until I went back to Maryland. And then as my mother got older, I came back to Portland. I'd been doing some work on the Obama campaign and the John Kerry campaign back east. I was just shocked at the amount of work that needed to be done. For example, the organization has been around since the 1950s. Not one piece of information was translated into Spanish. They're 15% of the population. I didn't see them working on the things that needed to be worked on. And when you look at them, I was just really shocked and amazed that there's still things that I can learn about this city when I think I'm done being amazed by the amount of racism.
Just for the benefit, again, of of some of the viewers after this, why don't you just kind of give them a little background about who is Rachelle, okay? You ran,
Oh, wow.
you ran. I mean, you got the voters pamphlet, but a lot of times, let them know again who you are.
Yeah, that's a little bit complicated right now with COVID, but let me tell you about my political background. So
Okay,
I
sure.
actually started my political background in Washington, D.C., where I moved from Portland in 1992. And I spent some time working on both of Obama's campaign and also the John Kerry's campaign. And I fell into politics by accident. So I worked back in D.C. for a defense contractor. And they wanted to knock some doors and get some backing from some of the defense folks when I was with the John Kerry's campaign. And you needed to be able to have access to the building. And so in order to have access to the building, you needed to have a security clearance, a reason to be there. So I had that. So they asked me if I'd do it. So I did, and I became very interested in how politics actually shaped our everyday lives. And everything is political. I don't care what it is, it's political. The water you drink, the lights that come on, the roads that everything that you use every day is political. So I wanted to stay involved. And when I came back over here to Portland, I started with Multnomah County Democrats and also trying to educate the public around what they should know about various different voting blocks, voting strategies, getting people to the polls. And by that, I mean actually having them fill out, register to vote as a voter and choose their party, and then actually fill out the form and vote. So I've stayed very involved in different capacities, and now I'm definitely trying to work more on issues related to African Americans and Indigenous folks.
Okay, good. That sounds great. Okay, now I understand. Now you lived here. You were born and raised here.
I was actually born in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, okay.
I moved here when I was 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, like you said, you moved back east, and then you.
Yeah, I got married, and there's always that lure. So I went ahead and moved back east, and then after a divorce, and my child got old enough where he could jump on a plane. I wanted him to come out here and connect with his grandmother. It's hard flying back and forth. So we did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, good. Okay, okay. Now, like I said, we've had Dr. Milner on for a bit, aspect of it. Well, what about what else can you say about the whole issue of of Black History Month? Well, what are some of the points you might want to make? I mean, you were sharing that at the beginning aspect of it, but again, even if it's redundant.
Can we go back to what Dr. Milner was talking about for a minute?
Go on. Yes.
Okay, so after he finished just really literally confirming what I thought, that the racism here is different. It's inherently different. It's oftentimes invisible. I've made it visible to a lot of folks. I can't say that many folks like the way I have spoken about my freedoms or people who are melanated freedoms because they prefer that the approach give them more time to digest and understand, and that I educate. And when I educate around whiteness and what privileges they have, I want to be compensated because slavery is over. And so I think 400 years into disenfranchisement, someone should be able to pick up a book, go to a movie, or sign up for a class at PSU or PCC required class. And I hope you're getting this because this is really important, where people learn about the history of disenfranchisement of African Americans in Oregon, because we keep perpetuating it by thinking that everyone is standing on a level playing field, and that clearly isn't happening. So as Dr. Milner said, you can see the history today. And where I think we can see that history of the 3 Black exclusion laws, the 39 lashes laws, is when you look at the education system, Portland public school systems and Oregon school systems, and the way we fund it. It's constitutional the way we fund it, but it's constitutionally written to disenfranchise people of color. Period, end of story. Portland Public Schools has been shortchanging African American students financially, shortchanging them with the resources, shortchanging them by expelling them, shortchanging them from the school to prison pipeline. Everywhere, by every measurement, we've been disenfranchised. So then you go to home ownership. So it was 1952 or 53 when we were able to buy homes in Portland. And what you see is people did buy, and they were only able to buy in a certain area, and it was still very difficult. So we had redlining. All of these things come out of what Dr. Milner talked about, and they still exist in different alliterations of it. So at first it was, you can't stay here. And then it was, well, it's beneficial. You could stay here to work, but you can't stay overnight. Then we get sundown laws. We just have burden after burden after burden of hurdle we've had to jump. And for that reason alone, reparations are necessary to level the playing field so that we can create our own systems. Because I personally don't want to be the oppressor. I don't want to switch roles. What I want is autonomy. And reparations would give me autonomy. I don't have to have a white person decide that I get, of course, now my nose starts to itch in earnest. I don't have to have a white person decide what reparations would look like for me, because maybe in 1850, it was 40 acres and a mule. And today it's not. I mean, what are you going to do with that mule? I mean, I would probably like the mule, but most people live in cities. A mule's not all that practical. So what is the financial compensation, that value that we would place on that mule back in 1850 with interest and damages, okay? Because when you are the wronged party, not only should you get what you lost, but there should be an attempt to compensate you for the losses that happen as a result of the original loss. So we have 250 years of slavery and 150 years of mass incarceration and Jim Crow. So all this 400 years, I mean, how do you compensate us for that? The reason why it hasn't happened today is because people know that it's a big task, and I disagree when people say it's an impossible task. It's not.
Let me share a thought with you. Let's go back to that point that you were making about 40 acres and a mule. I'll give you a sampling of how it could relate today. You see, back in those days, the 40 acres of the mule, it means you got land, and then the mule, if you will, would be able to work the land, i.e., basically to grow vegetables and things, a crop. And then they have the opportunity to sell that crop. You got me? Whereas today, it may be an office space, for instance, you got me? An office or a house, if you will. And then the idea that they would basically be able to work out of that house. So that would be the 40, the acres would be, let's say, the house or a building where they could put their wares on. You see what I'm saying? You got me?
Yes.
And then pick up the money, and the other money would be for the overhead. They come up with overhead money, be able to pick up money for staff and all that kind of materials and stuff like that. So it can relate today aspect of it. Plus the fact it relates to the economy. Because and once you've established yourself, you're selling your wares aspect of it. That means people come to buy it, they the taxes, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an assimilation kind of a concept that I just shared with you. And so it does mean, but the point is, in order to get there, people have to get involved, like you and I have gotten involved with reference to running for office. And but even when we did Dr. Milner, I did that purposely. I was going to ask him, the other question I was going to ask him was, how often has he been down to the legislature and make the same presentation before the people who are going to be signing off on the bill? He hasn't. He never has. And then you start thinking about that part. Then you think about another part from the standpoint of, okay, fine, we've been talking about Black folks for years outside of the classroom. When is it going to be a part of the classroom, per se?
That's
and
what
then,
I'm saying.
and then another second arbiter, and then in fact, Liz Taylor, she should be around here somewhere. But anyway, Liz and I were talking about something, and she came up with an idea, and it makes a lot of sense too. When before a teacher gets a certificate, the teacher certificate aspect of it, there should be a mandatory course like Dr. Milner in the college situation, so that when they graduate, they've gone through that course, if you will,
Yes.
to communicate. You got my point? And that's not happening. And so those are some, I'm throwing that out to you on the plate. So maybe that might be something you may want to get consideration when you are running for office.
Well, I'll tell you something. Right now, under this pandemic, I think that my immediate response is to do something. And I don't see the government doing a very good job in some things. So when we talk about the repercussions for today, one of the biggest things is we don't have the wealth when something like a pandemic comes along, when there's a downturn in the economy, to hang on. And so we're losing our houses, we're getting evicted at higher rates than any other group of individuals in Portland. It shows. We're disproportionately houseless. When we do purchase the house, it's a one generation deal. We're in the house for one generation, and then that generation passes on. We're not in it for the second generation. Mm-hmm. But I think in order to make change, not only do African Americans have to understand what is going on, but we need the majority of the population, which is white, to understand what is going on. It is imperative that we have a course starting in like middle school and beyond. And I say middle school because there's some nuance to this, right? You have to be able to understand and handle the information that is being put out. But I would say that with television and the internet, most kids who are 12 years old can describe racism to you. So I think that is the perfect age to start having discussions about behaving in society, and also what the African American experience is as it relates to U.S. history, because it's not African American history, it is U.S. history. And
right, exactly.
Yeah, it's U.S. history, and we're not teaching it. We're not teaching it at all. And we don't see the contributions noted around town that we've made to this community. There are very few buildings, and most of them have been in the last 2 decades, right, that are named after the contributors, African-American contributors to this area. We just heard about the York statue going up in Mount Tabor, which that's fantastic. I don't know how that happened. I believe it was a donation. But I want to point out to you that 2 years before that appeared, just about in February 10th or so of 2000 and I guess it was 2018, someplace around there. I reached out to Adina Long, who was the newly hired director. I believe she's from Philadelphia, and asked her specifically about changing the names of a couple of the parks to reflect the contribution of African American women. And I also spoke with then Nick Fish's assistant, who now is Ted Wheeler's assistant. I was given no both times. They said it wasn't a priority. Now this summer, you see it became a priority, right? And quickly changed the name of a park out in East Portland. And this I don't think has been shared before. Can I say this? Can I say this?
Yes, you go.
Okay. So they changed the name of Lynch Park, and I know that the daughter of the woman they changed it to, and I'm sorry, my memory fails, but a very deserving woman. But the truth is, they had no plans to change the name of that park. And when it became apparent there was no park named after a Black woman, they decided to change the name of a park, but not in Southwest Portland like I had originally asked. They decided to do it in East Portland because they knew Southwest Portland would put up a fit. I want to compliment Amanda Fritz for taking the name Custer Park and removing it, and now changing it to A Park. No one wants to be disenfranchised for 400 years, walk down every street named after the architects of your own demise. And so it's constantly a reminder that we don't belong here and that we shouldn't be here. Well, I'm Black and Indigenous. I belong here. I'm not going anywhere. And so I think people should kind of get used to the fact that we have a presence and we have a voice and we want to see ourselves in public life. And so I'd like to see a street named after not just Martin Luther King, but what are the contributors from Portland, Oregon, as if we have to go to another state to find contributors that are African American. No, we have contributions right here. We have people who've been contributing for years. I mentioned, I was thinking about Sarah Wisdom, who lived in Northwest and who opened a tavern in the 1850s. She came out here. Okay, what about the women who started the NAACP? There was a newspaper here ran by a Black woman. We don't give them any credit. And then we wonder why even people can't even get financial compensation. We've given financial compensation to Jewish people, which I think they deserve. But do you know America paid compensation to Jewish people? Did you know that? Now, I knew Germany did. I didn't know the United States did. When the Japanese internment happened, do you know that America compensated the Japanese for being interned? A lot of people don't know that. They just think, oh, well, nobody ever got compensated. You know how many times America has compensated people? In fact, they've compensated every group of people that has been incarcerated in the United States, except for African American. And when you talk about slavery and mass incarceration, they're one and the same. Just name change. Just a name change. In my humble opinion. In my humble opinion. So we're still doing it and we don't no responsibility, and it's time that we take responsibility. I believe that African Americans will be watching this very closely because we want answers. And we're not getting it from the police. We're not getting accountability from the police, and we want it from our elected leaders. And if they're not willing to give it to us, I suspect they'll be voted out of office very soon.
Well, look, a couple of comments here. Let's talk about the women piece aspect of it. And I'm sure that everyone would know, and especially, like you said, especially immigrants that just came here several years ago. And I'm talking about the woman by the name of Clara Peoples. Clara Peoples, a lot of people don't realize, she basically was the mother of the food bank. And it started right here in Portland. At Bethel AME Church, okay, got me? And Clara people would go out to the various farmers and the fish markets, the whole 9 yards, and she organized, she basically picked up food, brought it back down in Northeast Portland, of all things, and then basically gave the food to people, not only just in that community, but throughout the city of Portland. lady went out there, she filled up her car and parked on the corners and fed people, especially new immigrants, white immigrants, Russians, the whole 9 yards. It lined up in this, that, but she was the one that created that particular piece aspect of it. And in fact, she brought the Juneteenth piece to this.
I did know that.
She brought the Juneteenth piece aspect of it, and that's a very the point I'm getting it to is that just like you, when you were mentioning all of the positives that were happening, and people were benefiting from these situations. The fact of the matter is, we don't teach it in school. It's not a mandatory thing in the team. I mean, we got the kind of history. Black folks has the kind of history that it would be outstanding. But the fact of the matter is, you never get the opportunity. And most people don't deal with a lot of other things. It looks like we're kind of running out of time at this point in time. But I can go on and on and on. What we're going to do, we'll take a short break and we'll continue where you stopped off. Maybe Liz will be on by this time because she has something to say. Okay? We'll take a short, and then we'll get Dixion to get involved in the process. But he has shows that he knows we've had some good times on this show, and we talked about these issues. Okay, we'll be right back, folks. Hang in there, share it with the people, get them down to the table to get the second half. Welcome back again to this, really, as one would say, the Black Lives Matter situation, and in all due respect, it's Black History Month, folks. I mean, I don't know why there's such a big rile up, if you will, when people start talking about trying to identify themselves as Black Lives Matter. That's a fact. Black lives do matter. My lives matter, that's for sure. And it really matters when I was overseas in Vietnam fighting for this country, dodging them bullets, you know, when I could have sit up there and said, okay, fine. Hey, I'm Black to the Viet Cong. But in most cases, a lot of them would tell us in the Ville that hey, look, it wasn't our war. But when we got back down to the base, those rockets were coming, and they didn't veer off from the black camp, from the blacks. We had to fight just as hard, if not harder, for that matter. And besides, you know, so my point is that we got to communicate. That's what we need to do. We've got to communicate, and that's what we're trying to do now. I mean, at one point in time, people were saying, why have a Black History Month for the whole month? Well, okay, fine. I mean, excuse the French, we have White History Month every day. See? Because that's kind of like what we're talking about. And I could explain that to you, but you know, we're not going to take this time. All I'm trying to say to you is that the month means a lot. And now it's time to communicate. I think if we had some of this stuff in the school books, in the schools, in the classroom, and in the teacher certificate aspect of it, we can go down to 1 day with no problem. When you start thinking about the food that we eat, Kentucky Fried, all this good stuff, this, that, and the other, it basically came from the tables of Black folks. Folks don't realize that about food. You know, I mean, we just go on and on and on. There's all kinds of things, aspect of it. Whether it be military or whatever, we've been there. Black folks have been there. And that's what it's all about. So we're just having a conversation right now. We're trying to throw some education out. Melanie did a heck of a job, and hopefully we're going to get that piece down to the legislature, both to the Senate and the House, and get them to look at this piece and get some background aspect of it. Because you got a lot of people down there, in all due respect, that don't have this kind of background. Got me? They've never seen a Rachelle, but now they will, because they're going to see her on the tube. And then I know a number of those legislators out there, and I'm telling them point blank, Rachelle is legit. She filed to run for office. She's not just sitting out there just trying to be a major activist per se. She's a bona fide political activist, so to speak. She's signed, she's qualified, she's certified, and trust me, she's got some good she's got some material. That's what it's all about. So anyway, we're going to be there, and things are going to happen. So why don't we get right back into the show again? We're on again, and hopefully you called your neighbors and shared the fact that we're on live on Sunday here now. And you can always get us on YouTube, and we've got a history if you will, a diary of some of the shows we've done in the past, and they're all like this. This is community television, folks. And right from, that's what it's all about. This is layman's. We keep it at about an 8th grade level, if that's the case. You know, whether you're educated or not, we're communicating to the masses, if you will, okay? And so I would suggest, you know, excuse the French, Rush Limbaugh is gone now. I mean, there was a lot of reference to Rush Limbaugh. I mean, he spoke to a lot of the masses aspect of it. So anyway, you know, now there's a Bruce Broussard out here, and you'll be seeing a Rachelle here very shortly once she's elected to office. My point is that, look, we got to communicate. We can't continue this kind of a situation, and people are not going back. They're going to be right here today, and they're going to be right here tomorrow. Okay, so with that, let's get on to the show. Rachelle, you had something on your mind, and when initially we were talking about the whole issue with Mrs. People, you know, women. There's some very solid black women in this city, in this town aspect of it. But no due respect, Clara she was an icon. She was awesome. I mean, she did some things big time. And you know, you find a lot of these people at black churches, big time. They're there, you know. And when you start thinking about, you know, when you're talking about this school, you know, from the young kids or whatever, we were doing that in church. That's what you did in church. That's where most people got the primers aspect of it. They got it there at church. You know?
Yes.
Remember that? You remember that, Rachelle?
Yes, I do. And the truth is that I've never belonged to the black church, but I did go to a black church, and several of them. And the thing is, I knew about Juneteenth and Clara Peoples, and I followed in her footsteps in her lead, and I started the first Juneteenth out East 82nd, and I coordinated so that now when we get back on our feet, I think it'll be 3 Juneteenth celebrations, but they all started as a result of Miss Peoples, you understand? Right? I never met her. Don't know her. I think I spoke to her granddaughter or something one time, but just the inspiration of women and what they've done for this community. I did not know about the food bank. I found that out maybe just about a year ago. It didn't shock me though. It did not surprise me because it's very much like my mother. She would give you the shirt off her back.
Right.
And so when I envision Miss Peoples, I don't understand why there's not a People's Park. And why is the food bank called Oregon Food Bank? Maybe it should be called Oregon People's Food Bank.
That's right. That's right. The People's Food Bank. That's right. And you will go to the board. I don't see you having any problem. In fact, I'll even go with you as a supporter, military type. Go down to the board of directors of the food bank and throw it out there again. It's got to be part of the archives when we tried to get it changed. Got me? But she was not only talking about changing the name, but teaching those people how to cook a lot of that food. And once they got it in, they threw a lot of it away. They threw a lot of it away. They could have cooked that food and then shared good soups. And they
you know what? I volunteered at the Oregon Food Bank and still did not know that story of Miss Peoples until I stopped. And I had called the Oregon Food Bank, and I was working on my own little project called Mackey's Community Kitchen. So Mackey was my mom. And I don't know if anybody knows her, but if you did, her name was Maclita. So I know you don't know that many Maclitas. So there's only one.
They probably knew me, see, because I was always doing the political piece aspect of it. So they knew me.
She passed away, and she was just such a generous soul that I wanted to honor her memory by giving away this free food. Yeah. And so I looked around to see who was doing it in Northeast and, you know, where it might be a good place. And then I realized in what had been the Black community, there was no one dealing with Oregon Food Bank and delivering food in the Northeast. Now, I do know that some people have moved out or Southeast. However, the grandparents and the elderly people who are stuck in their house, a lot of them are still in North and Northeast. Yep. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Not the young people, they can get out during the pandemic. And so I started, I purchased a database. I mean, I got way into this. I purchased a database and I didn't really know how to use it. And so everybody's favorite technician who also unfortunately passed away, I'm not trying to be depressing here, but Jomo Greenridge was going to help me put in the database of where we could deliver culturally specific food. Like, where's the red beans and the rice and the greens and the gumbo and the cornbread? So we were going to put in all the addresses so we could check on them, because everyone is so spread out. That is the problem Dr. Milner was talking about. I know we were talking about a new subject, but man, that was so good. He said it's the main reason. The two biggest problems are police and reparations. I say he's right, because we don't have land. We can't build our own homes. We can't build our own apartment complexes. We don't have our own co-ops. And that's why I don't know if a storm happens and you go to their house, it's a locked door and then another locked door. Nobody knows who you're talking about. It used to be I could go on a corner and just say, does anybody know where so-and-so lives? And someone could point me in that direction. We don't have that community, and it's due to lack of political power to keep our neighborhoods from being gentrified, and also political might. And also we don't have the wealth to keep our homes and our neighborhoods, together.
Hold up, wait a minute. I think I got cousin Dixion, your cousin Dixion. I just saw her. You got your last name is Dixion, and her last name is Dixon. So I want to make sure I get you people together, but I want you to hear her for a couple of moments. She's the one that brought Dr. Milner on, and then I want to make sure I get, because otherwise he'll be beating up on me at the end of this day. Hey, Liz, how you doing? Sorry about all of the technical problems there, buddy. But
yes, but I was diligent and I didn't give up, but I started to just throw on my robe, cross my arms, and just sit in front of the TV and put my feet up.
You know that wasn't going to be allowed. Steve was knocking on your door almost, and then he got a signal, and he ran back to the studio. So now you're on.
Everybody.
Good. Got Rachelle on, and she's been carrying the deal here with me. And
good
and
job, Rachelle.
I want to shake you. Make sure you guys are going to be getting together. I think I told you that. I mean, we're gonna communicate. We got some things going, and you, because I know your background big time, and I got to know where Rachelle was coming from. That she was running for office during the time that I ran for the mayor piece. But the bottom line, we got work to do. Okay? But I want you to know, I want to thank you very much for taking the point on getting Dr. Miller here on the show today for Black History Month. He did an excellent job, and we hope to get that information to basically to the legislature, both to the Senate and to the House, because that's one of the problems. They don't have the background, and then maybe we might be able to get them to invite Dr. Milner to go before the Assembly and speak to the entire House and Senate and educate them about the benefits of Black folks and what the definition of reparation is all about. Okay? So I'm throwing that on you, and I know you can get the job done, and we're going to use it. We'll use the show as a backup. If they don't want to get it, you can also go to the technical side of the legislature, to the governor's office, to have us put it on their network there at the Capitol.
Right.
And then basically make it kind of a requirement that everybody look at it, and then maybe just kind of do a ribbon cutting thing with the governor, because she is running for office, and she likes to identify with some Black folks. And I know you can get the word out there to her aspect of it.
Okay.
So again, thank you very, very much, Liz, for helping us put that piece together. And he's available now for in the futures if we need him. So again,
wonderful.
Thanks to you aspect of it. So why don't you come in and say a couple of words aspect of it, because I know you've got a lot to say, and maybe you can just start off by saying, what did you feel about the reparation piece? That's how we got to that particular point.
Well, right now, I am so excited.
Okay.
I have worked on, in fact, consulted with Dr. Milner, who was my professor at Portland State back in the mid-70s. But I called him up probably about 4 years ago and told him that I want to see Oregon receive some type of financial reparation, because research tells us that there are already 6 nationalities in the state of Oregon that are receiving or have received financial reparation for inhumane treatment.
Yeah.
And the sick, and each blacks, it always footnotes, but black Oregonians have suffered 100 years longer than these other nationalities, and still have not received financial reparation. So the time is now. And one of the time is now. So the two bills that are currently in the legislature that are moving through the process are Senate Bill 618, and that bill addresses why reparation for Black citizens, from ages 18 and older. And then the second bill is Senate Bill 619 that addresses how the money, $123,000 per Black citizen that can show their heritage, can follow their heritage back to slavery. Tells how a department will be set up within the Department of Oregon Department of Revenue. Each citizen will have to apply by December 2022, so it's just a year from now, and we will receive annually $123,000 a year for life. Talking to Senator Lou Frederick last week, he says that one of the major things that's going to happen, understanding the legislative process, is that these bills have been drafted, they have been read, but they have not yet been introduced to committee. So our immediate job is for these bills to be introduced in both committees, on the House side and on the House of Representatives committee, and then it goes to the Senate committee. Those bills have to be testified on and passed through that system. One of the challenges that I see is that we want this bill. It's very important that this bill is actually passed by, I'm giving it by August. I feel like it should be passed by August. But there's a man, and his name is George, what is that?
Talking about Ski?
Okay, let's be nice.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Yes, but anyway, he's the chairman of the Judicial Committee in the state of Oregon. Will have to actually schedule these bills and put them on the calendar. Once these bills are put on the calendar, then we want all the support that we can get from all over the nation. Now, we are the closest. Oregon is one of the closest states. We're the state that's the closest to having the bills passed through the legislative process. And even once the bills are passed through the legislative process, Oregon still partners with the Congress for the financial part of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, but you didn't mention that other point that we had a long discussion. That's Lou Frederick. That we got to have him come on, because it's my understanding he's the one that basically put the language together initially, right?
Right.
Okay, so if he's that person, we need to have him on, like we had Dr. Milner, and then he could then explain to the public across the board as to what was his rationale, if you will, of writing up these bills. He's a state senator from this area aspect of it, and then what would be the next step? What's the process? Well, it goes from his office to this gentleman that you mentioned. I use the word Ski because of his name. I think he's Russian, if I'm saying. But anyway, but the bottom line is it goes to him, and then he has to go to both the Congress, not the Congress, the Senate and the House. He has to go to Senate and the House, and then they're going to have a discussion on the deal. And then the chair of both of those entities, if they don't send it forward to basically to be
It
voted
could
on.
get tabled. It could get tabled and
That's right.
lost.
So we're gonna go through that process. So hopefully you will make that next run and maybe get Rachelle. You got 2 Dixons now. I got 2 Dixons now. See, you get
The gentleman's name. Listen, the gentleman's name is Floyd. Okay, his name is Floyd Prozanski.
you gotta do it right now.
Prozanski.
Okay.
Floyd
Right.
And he's been in the legislature for a long time. In fact, he graduated from Texas A&M. So he's very well educated in urban studies and Black studies.
I should know him. You know, I was raised in Texas, in Houston, Texas and Houston.
Oh, yeah.
And I got a number of Russian friends that I know. And like I said, they say, Bruce, don't worry about trying to pronounce my name. And so just call me Ski. That's cool. we know one another. Everything's cool. But my point on getting jokes aside, we got to go through the process.
Yes.
Process.
We need right now we need all hands on deck.
Well, hopefully we can hook you up with Dixion, your cousin, the other Dixion. Come to find out, I know some of her folks. I mean, they were military like I was. So the name of the game is that you guys, we just sit down and have a 3 cup of coffee and just talk about what can we do together, right? I mean,
right.
Gotta get Lou Frederick. We gotta get Lou Frederick on this show, Senator Lou Frederick on this show, and hopefully we can get him next week if possible. I mean, Black History Month will be almost gone by the next show. That doesn't say that we can't go on and get him on and then make sure we market it out to the people and get that show out to various ends, whether it be school, churches, houses, organizations, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
So that they can call these folks up down at the legislature and say, vote for this bill aspect of it. It's not going to be easy kind of a situation. But the fact of the matter is, we got some of the tools that we need to use. Okay?
Right.
Is that fair? All right?
Yeah, and like for anybody that's watching the show, I would just tell them to email the Oregon State Legislature, the chairman of the Judicial Committee, and just find out, hey, when is this bill going to go to committee? When are we going to send these bills to committee? Senate Bill 618 and 619.
Yeah, but they don't know. They don't know nothing. It hasn't even come out to them yet. You got to remember that.
Well, the public, they've heard about it. They don't know the exact details.
That's right.
But
the bill has been read. We know about it. The bill has been read. It has been read in the legislature, but it has not been scheduled to go to committee, which is the next
All right.
phase.
Well, we need some answers, right? We need some answers.
Right.
We need some answers. So hopefully the 2 of you all will hook up and then make some calls. Let's just start making some calls. We need Lou Frederick. We got to get Lou Frederick on. He is from the area. He's a state senator aspect of it, and he needs to throw out the whole process. That's the key.
Okay.
Point blank. Okay.
I'll work on it.
So that's what's happening on that particular end of the deal. What else is on your mind? Let's get Rachelle on it. Okay, Rachelle, what do you think about what Liz just shared with us? Any thoughts? Can you hear us? We don't have the volume.
Oh, she must not hear. Another thing that I'm concerned about is, are you back, Rachelle?
I'm back. Bruce. Okay, so Bruce, what was the question?
No, just basically, what do you think? She gave up some information aspect of it. Did you want to add to that at all? And I know you're knocking on doors.
This is probably my best habit and my worst habit. So my best habit and my worst habit is, while someone is giving me information, I'm calculating very, very quickly solution sets.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time someone's finished, I have 2 or 3 solution sets, and they're very annoyed because I haven't been listening.
Okay.
But I have been listening. So when I hear this, what I think is we need to influence the people to make the right decision. I haven't found that there's a propensity to make the right decision without that influence. My dad was a Marine, so I do stay up, I do stay with, and I stay longer.
Oh,
And
sure.
oftentimes, it's oftentimes to stay longer that people think they'll wear me down. I'm like, no, I'll wear you down before you wear me down. Just, no, it's not happening. So I think for younger people, it's the social media. And I was just trying to figure out, like, what's the hashtag for this? What's the hashtag for reparations now? 40 acres and a mule. What's the hashtag? And then I started to see the TikTok videos. So they're 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and people tell a story in the TikTok. So I see this in terms of how do I get the best, fastest information out, and how can technology help? Because I don't think reading through the documents, I don't think that's it. And I also think that people need to see what's possible. And when they see each other talking about it, and they realize that there's 300,000 people having the same conversation on TikTok,
Right.
in Clubhouse, and Facebook, they're gonna feel like it's possible.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess one of the things though is for people to have the right conversation. We already know in history, once again, research tells us that there's always two sides to a story. And with legislation, we have to present this legislation to other people, to just onlookers, to constituents, to people across the nation. Because trust me, reparation will come to pass. However, it's when does it come to pass? I'm 66 years old. I hope it comes to pass before I die. Because Lord knows, my ancestors have lived 80 years. Some it's 90 years. 104 years old, right here in the state of Oregon, and have had to put up with the inhumane treatment due to blatant racism. And even through the legislative process, researchers tell us, if you look at the Oregon State statutes alone, there should be no question about racism and how it has created a huge disparity alone just within the income gap of blacks and whites, for example. And I call it taxation without representation. This is a topic that Dr. Milner and I have discussed. And one of the things that Dr. Milner suggested was, Liz, do the research. When I did the research, I found out there was only a couple of gentlemen, that went in a room in the 1800s and wrote and decided that blacks will not have slavery, will not be a slave state. Number one, we won't be a slave state because it's not good business. We can't make money off slaves because of the climate. They can't pick cotton. You can't pick sugar cane. We don't grow tobacco here, so we're going to have to figure out a way to be able to tax these people. So the taxes, with the lower your income is, it turned out the higher are your taxes. And even when you're looking at taxation without representation, right now today, the median income for a white individual is $52,000 a year today, as opposed to the median income for a black resident is $22,000 a year. Now, why is that? Even though you have affirmative action, affirmative action is gone. But one of the things that we've learned is that black folks historically are taxed at a higher rate to create wealth for the other side.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. I actually, my dad was self-employed. He was in the military for a while, and then he was self-employed. He worked for Boeing, and then he was in the military doing electrical work. And at that time, that was one of the better ways to be employed. He didn't want to work in the opportunities he had in Kansas. So he worked in the shipyards in Seattle and went to work for like Farrell Shipping Lines. I remember the name on the check. When the check used to come, I used to look at the Farrell Shipping Lines. I still remember that 40 years later, you know. But it's why we don't own our houses. We can't create generational wealth, and why there's so many of us that are suddenly houseless, because we don't have houses that we own. Now, to put 2 people in the house is to call the landlord, renegotiate a lease, deposit. You're not just going to grandma's house anymore. And also, I want to say, this is true for the nonprofit world. So I am one of a few African-American nonprofit founders. I realize they exist, and Bruce has just pointed out earlier how we don't get the credit. Like, that should be the Oregon People's Food Bank. I just don't understand how her name is completely gone. I just like, wow. So
Claire May Peoples?
Yes, like what happened there? I mean, I'm nosy. I'm gonna find out. But I just want to finalize and say that we need more people of color going to other people of color. Even when it's a bit of a challenge, it makes a relationship that's more consensual. And when the relationship that we have with the state and African Americans, it's abusive. The state is abusive to me and my kind, to Black Indigenous people every day in every possible way. I feel threatened by the state. I want to talk to people who understand my background, and I don't want services always handed down.
Right.
Okay, we're right at that point, folks. I'm sorry, but we're right at that point. This has been Black History Month. Black History Month.
We'll be back next week.
And Richard has been sitting there just listening. So we're going to be doing a show, and Richard and I are going to have a discussion. You got me? About the whole piece. But again, I want to thank all of you for being with us. This has just been great. I'm looking forward to working very closely with the Dixions. I got 2 of them now, not 1. Okay? Have a good one. Talk to you guys a little later. God bless and be safe. Take care.
That's all for now. Thank you.
Racism and systemic racism feels very different than other places I've been, like Maryland, DC, Virginia, Atlanta. Much more harmful. It's invisible to many people. They can't see it. And you expect that the smiling faces actually mean that people are welcoming to you. And it's not the case. And so it throws people off guard.
There should be no question about racism and how it has created a huge disparity alone just within the income gap of Blacks and whites. For example, Black folks historically are taxed at a higher rate to create wealth for the other side.
That is, we don't teach it in school. It's not a mandatory thing in the I mean, we got the kind of history. Black folks has the kind of history that it would be outstanding. But the fact of the matter is, you never get the opportunity